Welcome to the Art of Living Free series with Anthony Silard.
We would love your support to keep these valuable videos and podcasts free for everyone. To make a donation, please visit theartoflivingfree.org. 100% of all proceeds go to nonprofit education programs. Today, Dr. Silard explores a new term to help you reclaim your sanity: news regulation.
Hi, I'm Anthony Silard, and welcome to the Art of Living Free. Today, we're going to explore a very interesting topic. I call it a new term for our times. It's a term that I came up with over the last few months, and I never really felt there was a need for it as much as today. Here it is: news regulation. Okay, so what is news regulation, you may be asking? What does that mean? Well, let's look at other forms of regulation. Emotion regulation is when we manage and regulate our emotions, so we don't express too much emotions, nor do we express too little. Self-regulation is another form of regulation. It's not only about emotions, it's also about other forms. For example, hey, I don't want to get involved in drugs, I don't want to have one-night stands, other things that we may feel, you know, I don't need to shop so much, I should sort of curtail that. Those are all forms of self-regulation. Now, what about this new term, news regulation? What does that mean? Well, never before in human history, as far as I've been aware, have we been so attuned to the daily news. And it's causing many problems for many of us. And think about all the forms that it takes. So it's looking at creditable news sites like CNN and BBC, which I look at pretty regularly. It's looking at what many call fake news, right? News stories that turn out are not even true at all. Why are we reading them? And when we go on social media, all of a sudden, everyone's a news reporter, right? Everyone's a broadcaster, and we're getting so much information, this deluge of information, and many of us have been unable to handle it. I can speak about family members and friends, people I talk with regularly, who have trouble sleeping because they're tuning into the news so often. How else we turn into the news? I do this sometimes. You just go on and take your phone out, and in Google you put COVID. What's happening with the COVID trajectories in different countries, in different states, in different counties, within states, and we can attune to this news so often. And what happens is our moods go up or down based on whether we're finding what we're hoping to find or whether we're finding something else which dismays us. So for example, we look at the COVID trajectories. Oh, okay, so, it's getting worse. Case rates are going up. And then we feel depressed for a few days. Or, oh, look, case rates are going down. That's really good. Feeling more hope that we're going to get through this sooner. Same thing with presidential polls. You look at you put it in presidential polls, and then you go and, oh, well, there's so many sources, and they're saying different things, so much information, there's so many polls happening every single day. What do I look at? So the problem with all this is that we experience a tremendous amount of anxiety. Are you aware that the average level of anxiety of an American adult in the past year, according to the CDC data, Center for Disease Control and Prevention, their data, their survey, has tripled. Anxiety is 3 times what it was a year ago. Just this morning, I'm walking out to go for a little walk, and I see my neighbor who I haven't seen for a long time. He's like, oh, I'm working so much. I feel so much anxiety with everything that's going on. I don't have time. I haven't been emotionally available to my children. And it's just, and so we started talking, and I'm thinking like, okay, part of this, he's saying I need to go meditate more. I need to do yoga and other stuff like that. But the other part of it is he needs to regulate his consumption of the news. See, what we have to understand is that we consume the news, we consume information, just as we consume food and drink. And what we consume is going to affect our health. So for example, if you consume very healthy food, you're probably going to feel better over the next few days. If you consume junk food, you're going to start feeling progressively worse. Right? And it's the same. So it's like there's healthy fuel in food, and there's junk fuel that burns really quickly and then leaves us feeling even hungrier than before and edgier and more irritable and so forth. It's the same with the news. So let me share this with you. I myself fell prey to news dysregulation. So in other words, I was not able to regulate my consumption of the news. Early in the pandemic, I was checking every day about the numbers, the new cases, fatalities, so forth, and I was going crazy. And I had to stop. I had to say, you know, I can't keep doing this. And so finally, my wife and I, we came to an agreement that we're going to check the news once a week. And we started doing it first on Saturdays. Okay, so I'm a little more structured than my wife is about these things. To her, this was like, you know, another kind of like folly of her husband kind of thing, like stupid idea. So we started doing it on Saturday. And then, you know, some Saturdays were really good and the weekend was really good because the cases were coming down and so forth. Other Saturdays, I got really depressed and the whole weekend because the news wasn't telling me what I wanted to hear. So then I thought, well, let's switch to Fridays. Let's check on Friday mornings. That way work becomes a buffer. And then by Saturday, it's like, okay, what's happened has happened and let's enjoy the weekend. So that's worked for a while. Lately, it's gone to twice a week and that still feels manageable. But I have to tell you, the less I check the news, the happier I tend to feel. Now, I feel anxious sometimes. Like, okay, it's Tuesday and I'm not checking until Friday. And I may think, well, you know, am I missing something? Is there something really important? Now, I have no doubt with the social the networks we have, the friends we have, if something's going down, someone's going to tell us, right? Because we're in touch with enough people. If we were just totally isolated, I might feel, you know, let's just make sure. Like if there's, for example, we live here in Southern California, right? There's like fires like 30 miles of either side of us right now, raging, right? And so, you know, you could say, well, you need to check the news 10 times a day. What if there's an evacuation? Well, we have very friendly neighbors and friends that we talk to regularly. I think we would know if there's going to be an evacuation. But, you know, famous last words. Sometimes maybe there's something and you really need to check. But the question is, being that attuned to the news, checking 5 times a day, is it worth the anxiety that it provokes? Now, let's just take a very quick look at anxiety before we wrap up. So anxiety, as Richard Lazarus, the Berkeley psychologist, has found, is an existential emotion. We feel anxiety when we feel something threatens our very existence. So that's why we check the news so often, because we are trying to stay safe. We're trying to stay secure. The irony is that we are checking the news so often that our immune system is becoming hypervigilant. We are releasing cytokine, having these cytokine storms going on inside of our body, which basically means our immune system's going in overdrive, and that can lead to organ failure, that can lead to heart attacks, that can lead to a whole host of very detrimental, negative personal consequences. So the need to regulate the news, the need for news regulation has never been greater. There are a lot of sources of our anxiety right now, ranging from political to economic, what's happening with the economy, businesses are closing. I think by one count, 1 in 6 businesses are closing right now during the pandemic. Socially, we feel lonely. We're worried about what's happening with our kids who are studying online, and so on and so forth. There are many different sort of sources of anxiety. Of course, the big one is COVID-19. Like we're worried about our health and the health of the people we love, our family, our friends. So there are a lot of sources of anxiety out there. And what anxiety does is it impels us to take action to reduce its source. In this case, there are a number of sources. So what is the action many of us go to? What is our go-to action? Checking the news. But if we do it over and over and over again, our well-being actually suffers tremendously. And again, our immune system goes into overdrive. We become hypervigilant. We don't enjoy our lives as much by any sense. So my advice would be, develop your own vision for news regulation. How often will you check the news? Make a decision. And so no one can tell you, I can't sit here and tell you, you need to check the news this many times per week. No. What I'm suggesting is you connect with your higher self, with the repository inside of you where love and truth resides. Go to that higher self and ask, how often, like, if your higher self is like you at 80 years old, picture yourself with white hair at 80 years old. talking with you, standing next to you. And what is that person telling you? That's your higher self. That's your life vision. How often should you be checking the news right now, this week? And whatever that is, if that's once a day, if that's once a week, if that's twice a day or 3 times a week, whatever it is, decide what it's going to be based on your higher values, based on your higher self. Decide what it's going to, how often you're going to check the news. And also, my suggestion, don't check after 6 p.m. because you're not going to sleep very well if you don't get the news you want. Why? Because again, anxiety, because you feel your life is at threat. You feel your security is at threat. So check the news earlier in the day, gives you time to do some thinking and some sort of reevaluating of what you've read in the news and taking it, getting the realistic part of it that the negative emotions in you signal that you need to pay attention to. So there's some things you really do need to pay attention to those. And then reevaluate it, come up with like where your deeper sense of hope is for how this situation and other situations in your life are going to be resolved and what you're going to do. Because remember, anxiety is a high arousal emotion. So it's embedded in action tendencies, like a tendency for us to take action to reduce that anxiety. So let the anxiety after reading the news transmute naturally into the actions you're going to take based on what you've read or what you've seen. And then take those actions and let the rest go. And then come back to it the next time that your higher self, your deeper values guide you to check the news and start the process again. Okay? Because the bottom line is, for many of us, we have a lot to be grateful for, a lot of positive things in our lives. The more we pay attention to news regulation, and each of us develops our vision, our deeper values on how we're going to regulate our consumption of the news, the happier and the more well-being we're going to experience in our lives.
Life offers us many challenges, and the artoflivingfree.org offers new ways of thinking so we can see these challenges from a new angle and overcome them. Whether it's Anthony Silard's free blog, video or podcast series, his book, Screened In, The Art of Living Free in the Digital Age, or personalized courses, the artoflivingfree.org will help you refine your life vision and then transform it into action. Find out more at theartoflivingfree.org.